Let's look at how to type check an object. Now, this is probably one of the most confusing ones that we're going to come across in the course because objects report differently with the type of operator that may not necessarily be what we'd like. So let's go ahead and demonstrate. What we're first going to do is hit the type of operator on our drink. This will give us back object as a string. But also we could do a type of array. We could do type of null, and instead of seeing array or null, we're in fact going to see object, object, object. Now, if that doesn't confuse you, I don't know what will. Now, the reason why this happens is because we learned at the beginning that arrays are almost like a subtype of an object. So they are an object, but they're a special type of object. And in the arrays chapter, we're going to look at how to type check an array. Because if we use this approach and want to see if something is an array, we could actually be getting an object, or we could be getting something like null, which we don't want to happen. So how can we get around this? Now, before we go ahead and answer the question, let's take a look at an object literal, and we're going to use the instance of object. So you can see our object literal reports true of being an instance of an object. Now, again, this is not very reliable. We can demonstrate this by doing the following. Now, the only difference here is null is not an instance of an object, whereas our array, in fact, is. So what if we strictly want to check something is absolutely an object and it's definitely not going to be an array? Now, this brings us back to our friend object.prototype. We're going to call that toString method. This is the bulletproof way, remember, of detecting this. We can pass in our drink and we'll save this out. So you can see here we have object object. So okay, this is brilliant. Now let's go ahead and do null. We get object null. Let's go ahead and add an array. We see object array. So you can now see why this object prototype to string pattern is the most effective and reliable way of accurately getting what you need, an object, null, or an array. And this will work with anything, as we've seen. It works on strings, it works on numbers, and it's the most reliable way that we can safely type check in JavaScript. Now, it might be in a real project. Do you want to take this function and perhaps wrap it in another function, say function get the type. We're going to pass the type of object in, and we're going to return object prototype to string. We're going to call the object. Now, because we have this object and all these square brackets, we're going to slice them out using the string method, and we're going to use -1. So in fact, what we're going to do is replace these with our new getType function. So instead of having these every single time, and this is just to show you the power of using a function for something like this. So what we'll do is save this out and check our console. So now you have object, null, and array. We could even take this one step further and say to lowercase. That way we don't have to provide an uppercase N, A, or an O. And we kind of get it back in a type of style. We get a nice string that's all lowercase. Now you may have just seen as well that my code decided to just reformat itself. This is in fact prettier. I'd recommend that you install it if you don't have it already. When the line length gets too long, it likes to reformat things nice and cleanly onto different lines. Now I can show you that again. We'll hit save and we'll undo it. So it's a really powerful tool. I'd recommend that you go ahead and install it. It takes away all the pain of formatting your code. And you may have noticed so far through the course when I don't tend to add these semicolons, when I hit save, Prettier adds them for me automatically. So that's a really nice use. So in this lesson, we have looked at our drinks object, we've created our getType function, and then we've compared using the type of and come to the conclusion that it is somewhat unreliable. Now, when we use type of with things like strings and numbers, it is reliable. We've seen that at the beginning of this course. But with anything objects or arrays or null values perhaps, it's completely unreliable, and we should opt for an approach such as this. And no matter what we pass in, it's always going to give us a reliable result if we need to check between perhaps an array or an object.